I generally go to bed at 5 a.m. And I wake up around 10.
In terms of like your day to day, I'm pretty sure it's fucking, completely different than what it was. I'm assuming like 20 years ago, right? How like a lot of people that look up to you, they want to have your type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
I don't think they know it completely. So like, how does you? Because you just told me like, dude, I fell asleep like at 5 a.m. I can't do that, and I'm like 25. You know.
Shout out to XS. Yeah. So we went on stage for Marshmallow last night, and then afterwards we got invited up to his suite.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. If you get up and invited into the DJ suite, there's a lot of great parts. But nothing greater than the fact that they cater it. Oh, there was so much good food in there, bro. I was eating like the chimichangas and the bro. It was so good. So no, I was up pretty late last night. The thing is, for me, I generally go to bed at 5 a.m. And I wake up around 10 or 11. Sometimes I go 4 to 10, somewhere around there.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, and the reason why is because when people come visit me in Las Vegas, it doesn't screw up my schedule. Right, I go to the gym usually around 11 p.m. or midnight. So for me, here's the main thing, because most people are not going to take up my schedule. I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I used to fly special ops in the Air Force, and we would get to work at 10 p.m. and we get back at 6 a.m. from a mission in Afghanistan. That was just what I was used to. I was very productive in that role as an Air Force navigator. So I just continued that once I got out of the military. I will tell you, checklists, which comes from a flyer. Any guy out there who's flown airplanes, is checklist discipline. Yeah, I could have the entire checklist memorized, but I still put the checklist on my lap and I follow the checklist.
Yeah.
And alarms. Those are the two things, checklists and alarms. Those are probably the two things that have helped me the most, is that whenever I have a free second, I go back to my to-do list and I reorganize it based on priority, and it's by immediacy. So for instance, there's a book, it's called by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi called Flow. And one of the things they talk about is clarity of goals. And the other, my to-do list is literally called clarity of goals.
Yeah.
So I go in there and I'll put the first most important thing that I have to do. Like I put this podcast on there today. And then I set my checklists based on these things that I have to get accomplished before. So I'm about to take a trip home for Thanksgiving, and I'm doing a podcast and two podcasts in Dallas. And then I go and I'm hosting a charity event in San Diego called the Teddy Ball, where we collect teddy bears, stuffed animals for children. And then I go to Miami. I'm doing a Fresh and Fit podcast, and I'm doing a Valuetainment podcast. Yep. And then, but before that, I go do the Babes in Toyland charity event for the Midnight Mission, where we're collecting toys for homeless children in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Well, all these things, if I were to think of them all at once, my brain would melt. Oh, not to mention, obviously, my podcast every week, my 2 live streams I do every week, all the podcasts I get invited on every week.
Yep.
And then the fact that I run Men of Action, we put 11 hours of new content in Men of Action every week.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. So 11 hours, because I do three 2.5 hour group calls per week, plus the 3-hour podcast. And every other week I do a Monday live stream that I do on YouTube. And that's for people who don't buy the program. Because I understand my program's expensive. I get it. For people who don't buy the program, they get to come on the live stream and then just do Q&A with me for 3 hours. I don't get off the live stream until every question is answered. So I do all of those things every week. And so if I were to think of all those things at the same time, I would have a panic attack.
Dude, forget thinking of them. You're doing them on a day-to-day basis.
If I considered all the things I do every day, I would have a panic attack.
Yeah.
But if I take them, here's the trick. Instead of having that anxiety, that panic attack, you just write it down on your checklist, and then you go back later and then you reorder. This is how I do also with my Q&As. I'm interviewing this girl tomorrow for my podcast. I come up with 75 questions for her. Then I reorder the questions based on the level of importance.
Yeah.
And that's why people who come on my podcast without fail always say that I have the most detailed podcast of anybody because of all the questions. I do so much research. I do at least 8 hours of research on each guest.
And you read a lot, dude. This whole podcast is every 5 minutes there's a book that you've read from this doctor, this person.
I try to do, so when I was in the military, I could get through 60 books a year. Now I can get through maybe 25. And the reason why I can only get through 25 now is because I have to study for my podcast guests.
Yeah.
That takes up a lot of time. My gym time, by the way, I do not listen to music anymore. I listen to podcasts, audiobooks, or classes online that help me build my business, or they are research for my guests.
Yeah.
I know this is, a lot of people hate this one, man, but you got to turn the music off in the car when you're eating or when you're in the gym. That time has to be reserved for listening to things that help you become productive, and get ready for it, at double speed.
Yeah.
If you can't make double speed, try 1.75, but you need to try for double speed.
Yeah.
When you start doing that and you start taking notes, and then you stick with the checklist, the discipline, checklists and alarms, you find just incredible levels of productivity. And then that's why I have 3 jobs. I am currently a quantitative analyst at a hedge fund. But we're not a hedge fund yet. Well, I don't want to say that. We're a financial firm, but we're not a hedge fund yet.
Yeah.
I'm a quantitative analyst for a fund out of Florida called Continental Financial Capital. I have my podcast, and then I have the Men of Action program. On top of the fact that I host all the bikini pageants in Las Vegas, I host Swimsuit USA in Mexico, and then I also host Paradise Challenge in Jamaica. Then I also host Babes in Toyland, Smash Global. I host a Model Citizen Fund, and I host all the teatro parties in Los Angeles. Well, I do all those things. If I were to think about all that at once, I'd be like, fuck, man, that is so overwhelming. But it's not overwhelming when you put it on a checklist and you're like, okay, let me reorder what I have to do today and only focus on one thing at a time. Put 4-hour blocks to finish that one thing. Best book I've ever read on productivity is The One Thing by Gary Keller. Yeah. And you do that, and man, I'm telling you, the things you can get through in your life are legion.
Yeah.
You also lose a lot of patience for people who waste your time. That happens very quickly. That thing happens. No disrespect. I know there's probably 10 people who are watching this right now. You probably hit me up this week and like, hey, Michael, let's go grab coffee. And I'm like, pimp, I don't have time to grab coffee. I just don't have time to grab coffee. It's not that I'm so busy and overwhelmed. It's just that every second of my day is planned out. Right. And you know what? I'm going to watch the Dallas Cowboys too. That's why I plan that out on my week. I'm going to watch the Texas Longhorns every week too. That's part of my weekly routine as well. So that's the answer. It's checklists and alarms. That's probably the most important thing.
Yeah.